So what is the one change that you have noticed in the last 20 years, like one big change कि कहाँ mindset अब जा रहा है as we are going ahead?
So one thing is sure is that 20 years back mutual fund was something which was very new product for them.
Hi Saurabh.
Hi.
So Saurabh, आपका 20 years plus experience at ICICI Pru, and now I think you're working as Zonal head in Mumbai. So warm welcome to you to join us at SDFS and Motilal Oswal.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for showing up and giving us your time. जो हम आगे as we go, you'll have to address the viewers. तो सबसे पहले तो आई जस्ट वांट टू आस्क यू कि आपको भी अब ICICI Pru में 20 years हो गए हैं. You have bridged between products as well as investors, distributors and everyone. So what is the one change that you have noticed in the last 20 years, like one big change कि कहाँ mindset अब जा रहा है as we are going ahead?
So one thing is sure is that 20 years back mutual fund was something which was very new product for them. Today the acceptability of mutual fund has reached 5 crores plus odd investors. Eventually I think that is a big change that is clearly visible. Understanding that remaining for a long term obviously helps generating the kind of wealth that they are seeing. I think that is big mindset change that has happened specifically in the last 5 years since the pandemic times. The rise of the technology has resulted into a significant change. So in 20 years I think that is a big shift that is we are seeing. Plus the emergence of the new generation customers, whether it is Gen Z, whether it is millennials. Because they are hooked on to the apps, understand what is financial literacy, and I think that is also the second change that I can see that has been happening in the last 5 years specifically, and has resulted into significant growth in mutual fund industry. So and along with that I think campaigns like mutual fund has helped the literacy level reached up to the great number of investors. So I think that is the three things that
have changed
in the last 20 years.
I mean, as you discussed कि awareness बहुत बढ़ गई है, मतलब now, and basically I think a lot of funds and products have also come up जो सबकी needs को cater करते हैं. ICICI Prudential AMC, like one of the largest in India right now. So I just want ki what differentiates you guys and like the rest of the AMC world and the competition world. Ki what is the secret sauce, if I may ask?
Great question. I think one thing we look at it basically. I'll talk about us as an AMC. So obviously at the beginning or whatever we launch or whatever we have products, at the center of it, the consumer is always at the center. So we look at it at this point of time or even over a long period of time. If the customer comes into a product, how well he can, what is his journey over a period of time, and keeping in mind risk adjusted return, which is the core philosophy with which we operate. It is not only the returns, it is about how can we give that with the least volatility, right? So that is what is the core objective that we always look at. So when you have risk adjusted returns, which is the core thought process, which leads to a lesser volatile client's portfolio, result into a good investor experience, and which leads to the flows keeps coming back to you, right? So eventually if the customer experience is good, which is again the core focus, and the volatility is low, which leads to the fund flows on a continuous basis.
Fair enough.
So ideally, if you look at it in India today also, there is 285 lakh crores of traditional instruments, whether it is savings or whether it is fixed deposit. So I think that is a big chunk wherein people have been investing or has been traditional savers. To make those people having that habit of investment, I think that makes a big shift for a mindset of an investor. So that is what our philosophy at ICICI is.
One thing जो ICICI AMC के लिए स्टैंड आउट करती है कि जब लोग कुछ बहुत मांगते हैं, then ICICI is known कि वो चीज़ वो लोग मतलब completely शायद stop ना करे, but they'll reduce. He very famously S नारायण जी ने 2024 में small cap से पैसा लेना बंद कर दिया था. Recently silver में भी I remember he was probably the first guy in Jan when he was like कि अभी silver लगता है run मतलब engine उसका खत्म हो गया है. तो ये contra mindset, how does the house which is so big and especially when investors come to you कि नहीं हमें डालना है, तो आप उन्हें कैसे ये समझाते हो एंड ये व्यू कैसे बनाते हो?
सो आइडियली अगर आप देखेंगे तो थॉट प्रोसेस जो होती है वो मार्केट साइकिल्स, वी फॉलो अ फ्रेमवर्क कॉल्ड VCTS which is valuations, cycles, triggers and sentiment.
Right.
So this is again core of our philosophy as a fund house. So wherein we look at these 4 parameters on the basis of it where the market valuations are today,
Right.
On a relative basis. And there are various parameters on valuations, whether it is price earning, price to book value, market cap to GDP, earnings yield. So that decides your valuation. Right? The second part of it, which is the C part, which is the cycles. Where are we in cycle at this point of time? Which means the business cycle. Whether we are in the expansionary phase, whether we are in the recessionary phase, or whether we are in the recovery phase. So that obviously helps us to decide the second part.
Correct.
Third will be the trigger part, which is obviously an interesting thing because triggers are something which you can predict, but generally you can always have variations on the same. Right? So T stand for trigger, and S is for sentiments. Right? So sentiments is something which is again a very interesting.
That's the most challenging, I guess.
So sentiments are decided by the flows, where the flows are coming into. If the flows in a particular asset or in a particular segment of the markets are very high, which means whether that asset class or whether that market segment is in a euphoric state or whether it is in a very early stage. So these parameters helps us to design, to come up with the thought process that where that asset class or where that market segment is, and on the basis of which we take our decision whether to stop flows into small cap, mid caps, or manage our asset allocation funds, which gives you a real idea where the valuations are cheap or the other part of the VCTS are following.
That's very thankful because once again आपने काफी investors का पैसा बचाया है with this amazing, especially the sentimental part really resonates because जब कुछ चीज एकदम hot हो जाती है तब खास करके हमें मन करता है कि okay let's enter this, but maybe that is the wrong time to enter that class. 2 years से we have seen market like a pendulum, like very famously being called a kangaroo market or a Trump market because जैसे ही सब ठीक होने लगता है वैसे ही तुरंत we see a big fall 10%, 20%, index level पे भी उड़ जाता है. So then what is the view now, like going forward? Maybe 1 year view या 2 year view, कुछ any comments?
So if you look at it, I think very rightly as you said, last 2 years have been, since September 24, markets have been really volatile, sideways, whatever you said, a kangaroo market or the Trump market. But eventually if you see, we have come down in terms of the valuations. Again, going back to our VCTS framework, the valuations have come down. The sentiments obviously has also cooled off. So, and people are looking for some triggers. So at this point of time, right? And if you look at the earnings cycle or the business cycle, we are fairly domestically, we are very well immune to that from that part. So if you look at what it was 2 years back, relatively 2 years from there, we are quite positive on equities at this point of time. And again, our hybrid funds, if you look at it, we have increased our equity levels, which were as low as 30-35%, from there to 50-55% at this point of time, depending upon the different products. So eventually, if you look at, we are always counter-cyclical from that point of view. And here we again trying to say when the equity markets have remained sidelined, we feel that markets are relatively better valued at it was 2 years
back. 2 years fair.
So someone looking to participate definitely is a better option than what he was looking at 2 years back. And the expectation obviously has to come down. That is the only thing which, because past 5 years were so good, the expectation levels have gone. So that has to come down. That is the only thing that we are looking.
I remember 24 peak, everyone was quite euphoric. एक ऐसा टाइम आ गया था जब लोग हमें सजेस्ट कर रहे थे कि आप इसमें इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए आपको, बिकॉज आई थिंक इवन वट एवर दे वर डूइंग वाज परफॉर्मिंग क्वाइट वेल. Thankfully now they are coming back to us कि अब क्या करना चाहिए, so that is okay. Now as a investor, like I want to ask you, what is the importance of multi-asset allocation, and especially you guys are, I think, coming up with something new in this side. So what is the crest of it?
So very interesting question, and I think the answer to the previous questions comes in very easily when you say that asset allocation or a multi-asset allocation category is a good way to give a consumer a good consumer experience, right?
Right.
So when you have all these assets in your portfolio, ideally there will be certain time when precious metals do very well, which has happened in the past 2 years. Similarly, if you had debt in the portfolio, which was a forgotten asset class, right?
Yeah.
So actually, in last 2 years, it has actually protected the downside.
Absolutely.
And has given that cushion. Similarly, there will be majority of the years your equity will be one factor which will give you good alpha over a long period of time.
Right.
And when will that year come? That gets is known only in hindsight.
Correct.
But when you have portfolio divided into equity, debt, and precious metal all put together,
right,
I think it's a good way to participate in equity, or good way to participate in markets, capital markets. Next 3 years, 5 years, when you expect the markets to be in the moderate return environment,
right,
that I think multi-asset fund of fund or multi-asset category is a good way to participate.
Right. एक्चुअली सिल्वर जब 50,000 का था तो लोग मस्ती करते थे कि ये काजू कतली के लिए ठीक है. सिल्वर धीरे धीरे 4 लाख आ गया तो सेमीकंडक्टर, ईवी, ग्रीन एनर्जी सब जगह पे इट स्टार्टेड कमिंग इन यूज. नाउ अगेन इट्स बैक टू 2 लाख लेवल, तो वापस वही काजू कतली फेज इज ऑन. So just wanted to ask कि precious metal sides पर क्या view है, especially gold and silver.
So if you look at our multi-asset allocation, again I will go back to the model that we follow. We started to give the call of getting into the silver or the precious metal in 2022.
Right.
So we were one of the fund house. We started giving it in 2022, but at the same point of time, we were early out of that commodity, specifically silver, in almost out of it by December 2025.
Correct.
Which is again visible in our disclosed portfolios. So ideally, if you look at today, in all the funds that we manage, which is either multi-asset or the other products wherein I can have precious metal, we are having a decent exposure to gold, but negligible exposure to silver.
Okay.
So if you ask us view on gold, which was very positive, or silver, which was very positive about 2 years back, at this point of time, we are neutral at this point.
Fair enough. So more of like a consolidation phase.
Correct.
Looks fair. And so debt, like what kind of debt do you guys add in this portfolio?
So again, asset class which has been forgotten. I think one best part about debt is that it always gives you a coupon, right?
Right.
Which today, if you ask us if it is in the range of 7 to 7.5%, ideally, if you take an exposure to a long-term debt, you are able to get an exposure of GSEC at a 10-year also.
Right.
And if the interest rates over a long period of time goes down, you make decent amount of return plus coupon on that product. So today, if you ask us, funds like multi-asset or multi-asset fund of fund actually will try to take even some tactical exposure as well as a long-term exposure into shorter duration debt also.
Okay.
So which a consumer, when he is doing it by himself, maybe he might be able to enter it.
Correct.
But the exit part is always much more
difficult.
So there can be some tactical calls which can help the fund to generate some alpha. But there can be shorter duration debt over a long period of time also.
Okay. So, as someone who is just starting his investing journey, like me personally, I wanted to ask कि what is your advice कि मतलब आप एक 25 साल के लड़के को जिसने just अभी job start की है, just अभी पहला pay slip आया है, and side by side an advice for someone who's probably 50 and is slowly going into his retirement mode, but he still has a few years left. So what is the advice for you for these two people?
Yeah, so again I think there will be for you who understands equity, and there is a runway from here till maybe the time that you earn. I think
Yes.
it is a good way to start with equities at this point of time. And I'll again go back to the model that we follow. If the model says 50 to 60% equity is there in my asset allocation category today, you can start with 50 to 60% equities today.
Okay.
Whether you do it by yourself or you park it into a fund. Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
either of the two options that you can look at it. In that equity, if you go for unconstrained funds, it makes more sense, because whether it is flexi cap or multi cap category, it will be obviously be helpful to you to generate in different cycles.
Correct.
The rest of the portfolio can be deployed in shorter term duration products, or in REITs, index, or in your precious metal also, so that you have equal allocation across. And I forgot that you can add some international equity if it is allowed.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when you have a right asset allocation, starting with equity, debt, and your international equity to an extent, and some come out of precious metal, and if you have an ability to do it yourself,
right,
which is, by the way, a very difficult thing to do, because you have to rebalance it when
Correct.
equities are up. You have to ensure that the debt is correctly measured. In that case, I think when you have an advisor, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
Because in our day-to-day life, our most important thing is to get our job, and we should have our mind more there,
focused over there,
rather than giving more time to investment. I think that's better to give it to an advisor who is a person who is taking care of your investment, and more on the behavioral side. It is not the funds, it is more to do with managing the emotions and the behavior. So,
correct.
2 years back, maybe emotions were very high that people wanted to easily invest in equity. But today, I think it is a time when you can increase equity, and your advisor will say, please increase.
Right.
So that is a good way to participate into equity. To your second question, I think, again, a hybrid kind of a strategy makes sense, because you are approaching somewhere near to your
retirement age.
And that can be a good corpus that you would have collected.
Absolutely.
You can park it there. Or having an equity is not a problem at the age of 50. Because if someone understands equity, can digest the volatility, I think not a problem in terms of taking equity again.
Correct.
But always have some portion of equity के साथ debt होना जरूरी है.
Fair enough.
So that would be the right combination that I would say.
Okay.